Hey, this is Around the Circle. I'm Jeff Cook. I'm with the TJ Wilson.
Hello.
We're going to be talking about a topic, Enneagram and a topic. And this is a topic that is first for us. We've hinted at chronic illness throughout our podcast history, but never really done the deep dive into it. And so that's where we're going today.
I mean, I do a deep dive like daily, but that's different.
Kind of spills out.
Same.
We're with our friend Brendan from Dayton, Ohio. Welcome, Brendan.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Both you guys are going to come to this topic with different experiences. I'm sure that experiencing a chronic illness will be very, very different for different people. And you are both different types. Brendan's a 6, TJ's a 9, and that's where we're going to be going today. So I would love to set this up with just like talking about the definition. There's like illnesses, and then there's chronic illnesses. Brendan, when you think about that category and your own experience, what comes to your mind first?
So when I think about chronic, I'm thinking about a sustained, ongoing, life-impacting condition. So whether that's debilitating necessarily or not, but just sustained and ongoing versus an acute illness that can be treated kind of one and done and move on. TJ, do you?
Yeah. It's I think the U.S. definition is the like 3 months or more sustained experience. So
yeah.
And Brendan, why don't we just jump in with your story?
Sure.
Like what? Tell us about like your experience of this, your first diagnosis, and how that's changed your life.
Yeah, happy to. I do think it's important to call out, like when I talk about chronic illness and trauma, I guess, because that is connected to a lot of pieces of chronic illness. I'll be talking about myself when I wasn't at my healthiest version of my number, and still not 100%, but working to get there. And so I want to be very careful about trauma dumping, but I also want to be vulnerable and honest to hopefully help others and connect with others who are going through similar experiences. So there'll be times where I talk about myself and I'm not necessarily at my healthiest number. So I have a history of chronic childhood illness. We think now that some of what I've experienced in adulthood was connected to what I was dealing with in childhood, although they didn't really diagnose much of my condition in the late 1900s. So in the 90s, when I was dealing with things, I have a diagnosis of chronic pancreatitis. And I learned early on through the repeated patterns of illness and other childhood events and messages that the world around me is inconsistent, at times unsafe, it can't be controlled, and people can't always be trusted. And so I see direct connections for me from the messages that I received when I was young, and then maybe where I sit in my sixthness. And I know that nature and nurture is a super big conversation and probably not to talk about now, but I do think that there is a lot about kind of the nurture side and what I experienced at a young age that informed kind of where I sit in my levels of health and some of my patterns of behavior. So I got my diagnosis officially of chronic pancreatitis about 15 years ago. I struggled in significant pain for years, lots of emergency department visits, hospital stays, severe diet restrictions. So basically what would happen is when I would consume food, the enzymes would stay in my pancreas and they would eat it or bleach it. It's very painful. It's described as one of the most painful things that you can experience. Went through the rigmarole with doctors who didn't believe me, and then finally found a specialist who did. That went on for years, and I lived on a feeding tube twice, over a year each time. My physician at Ohio State was very conservative in his treatment, so we did a lot of just pain management, diet restrictions, and then the feeding tube that continued to get worse. My pancreatitis continued to get worse. The disease continued to progress, and my pancreas deteriorated, which ultimately resulted in a life-saving surgery last August. I had a total pancreatectomy, so they removed my pancreas. They removed my spleen, my appendix, and the first part of my small intestine as part of that surgery. by the time I had my surgery, my pancreas was a third of the size that it should have been, completely atrophied, adhered to other organs. It just was in a really bad shape. So that's kind of the history of the disease and how it continued to progress into this big kind of life-changing event. I haven't had any major complications from surgery, but I've definitely had complications that have affected my life. I live in chronic pain. I struggle with depression. I have a diagnosis of PTSD from carrying that chronic illness for so long. Getting close to not being here any longer, which is really hard for me to say. And I don't like to say that I was actually that sick. It's hard for me to accept that. Diabetes type 3C, which causes like major swings of my glucose, my blood sugar. And so it's just a lot to deal with. And it's required me to take more time off of work than I had anticipated, which is hell for a 6. So as I was kind of processing through all of that and working on studying the Enneagram, because that's been part of my recovery, is to dive into the Enneagram and understand my 6ness more. I thought, oh, this might be a good conversation to talk about the Enneagram and chronic illness.
TJ, you're going to have experience with chronic pain. What do you hear in Brendan's story?
Yeah, I like the nature versus nurture part of that. Like there is, I mean, I feel like we could have a conversation, but I think the thing that really sticks out for me, and especially like within the research of this particular topic, it is fascinating, but it is really hard for a lot of us to remember that it kind of doesn't matter, because regardless of where it formed, this is how the type responds. This is how the type interprets. This is the experience a type has. I hear a lot of like you not being trusted and seeking help, that like people saying that you don't know what you're talking about. And and by the time the steps were taken that needed to be taken to try and get you healthier, it was so much damage had already been done.
Right.
And regardless of nature versus nurture, as a 6, you still experience your experience with chronic illness still can be seen through that 6 filter.
Yes.
That lens of not being trusted, trying to find support and people to help you figure out what's going on, and not being believed, and just having to carry this, and the impact it has on your mental health and all of the things like it. The sixiness of it seems clear within your description.
Sure.
I was thinking a lot about like what we're going to talk about today, and just the like what we can say about type and chronic illness. And I don't know that there's necessarily any hard and fast rules, but we can view a patient's experience of chronic illness through type, and you're demonstrating that wonderfully.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's what's been interesting for me, is to list out, and I have, probably because I'm a 6 and I have to be prepared for things, but listed out, what are all of the behaviors that I noticed in myself when I was at my worst and at my sickest. And then as I have started to recover and come out of the major things, right? Like the big scary thing is gone. My pancreas is gone. And that brings some challenges for me too, because I still struggle. And now I've got some other stuff that I'm dealing with. And people see me and they see that I look healthy, and they see that and they know that I don't have my pancreas any longer. So what's the problem, Brendan? Like, why is this continuing? And
even more not being believed.
Right. Which brings up then all of the cycles of like hypervigilance. And I learned super early to scan for danger and to read a room and to figure out the mood, so that I could figure out how I needed to shift myself to make sure everybody was okay. That was one of the things I wanted to be really thoughtful of with this conversation too, is when I get stressed or when I get nervous or I feel like I'm not being believed or whatever the insert word there is I can image craft and kind of become a version of myself or portray a version of myself that I believe will be most palatable to folks or will ensure my success or ensure my safety within a group. And I don't want to do that here. I want to be just vulnerable here and kind of talk through what's really going on. But yeah, I listed out a bunch of behaviors so that I could kind of track and realize and become more aware of what was happening within myself during illness and then during recovery. And they are all very sixy things for sure.
I don't think I've heard sixes talk about image crafting as part of their stress move is what I heard there. And so that's helpful.
I wondered if it was, and because I do this a lot professionally too, I wondered if it was leaning into my 3 a bit and kind of becoming this plug and play version of Brendan, not because I don't think I have inherent value, but because I'm trying to secure a relationship or secure certainty or secure success, because success means certainty. I don't know if that's the reason why I do that. I just pondered, I guess, is that 3-ness as in a stress move.
That seemed to be exactly what I heard, and I don't think that's an unhealthy thing all the time, but I love your naming it and saying, where do I want a position right now? That seems very advanced. But DJ?
Well, and we've talked a bit about 6s pulling from 3. Like one of the things that they can get there is sort of the demand for attention that the 3s can carry with them natively. And it's really hard to see in 6s. I think it's particularly hard for 6s to see because 6s don't want that attention, like, ever.
Yeah.
And so the idea that they're going to all of a sudden be like, hey, look at me, is anathema. They don't want that, right?
Right.
But this is a great example of the need for attention showing up. And the image crafting is part of that. Like, you have to get someone's attention to be believed, right? And that's, I think this is an excellent example of that need for attention pulling out of 3 in a way that is healthy and necessary. And I think this, even 6s who are not dealing with chronic illness, I think this is going to be a great window into seeing that part of what it looks like to need attention.
That's what I also heard, was the idea that your doctors, and you work with doctors, but still having folks not believe you. The nature of pain's really strange on this front, that only you can experience your physical pain, your mental pain, your emotional pain. These are all invisible.
At the point in time that a lot of folks weren't believing me, my disease had progressed so much. And what happens with pancreatitis when it becomes chronic is it's so diseased or fibrosed or whatever's going on in there that the amylase and lipase labs don't get elevated, and you can't see it very well on a CT scan. You can't see that damage very well. So it exists and it's there, but the organ's dying.
But you can't trust the evidence.
But you can't trust the evidence. And so I would go in and they would run the typical workup for somebody with pancreatitis and not see the affirmative. And meanwhile, I'm sobbing and screaming and throwing up and, just in really bad shape. And, so it constantly created this back and forth. And, then anybody who deals with pancreatitis has to deal with the "are you an alcoholic" conversation, because alcohol is one of the number one pieces of catalyst for pancreatitis. And yeah, sure, early on, I drank a lot. I'm 9 years sober. That contributed to it. It's not the reason that I have it. I have a pancreatic duct, or had, I don't have a pancreas any longer, but I had a ductivism. So structurally, my pancreas was already in bad shape. But anyway, so you just have to deal with a lot of that while you're in the hospital and moving through things.
Yeah, and especially that part that hits like the alcohol conversation is like, oh no, this isn't my fault. I didn't do this to myself.
Mm-hmm.
It happened before. And then like you have to convince people that it's not your fault.
Yes. And I
And the
chain,
sickness. Oh, yeah.
right? Yeah. And I chain. So I obviously deal with a lot of self-doubt being a six, and then chain events together. So
Mhm.
because an event happened that caused me to cope with alcohol, I
Mhm.
contributed to my pancreatitis. I damaged my organ. I caused my illness. I caused my loved one's pain. It's
Mhm.
all of that. And so I link these totally separate events that happen in my life together into this real deep sense of shame. And I know we talk about shame with like twos and fours and other numbers, but I feel it deeply as a six, because if I did those things, chaining these events together, then I did something that caused disconnection with the people that I love. And and therefore I must feel shame because of it.
Yeah. Which is false, just in case it needed to be said.
Right. Thank you.
But yes, that does not mean that you don't experience it and then you don't have good reason for experiencing it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I get that.
The other thing that I was hearing there, especially on the sick side, if you have doctors who are well educated in their field telling you we don't see what you are saying, I imagine specifically for sixes that would be incredibly difficult. Can you talk about those pockets?
Yeah, well, yes, and I would say I think it's why then I latched on to a physician once they found out what was really going on. So so I felt like I was constantly having to prove myself and be so adamant that this is what was going on. And I don't like how this is going to make me sound, but I'm being
This is a
vulnerable.
safe place. You're all right here.
I'm being vulnerable. But I became hyper vigilant about researching and understanding the symptoms of chronic pancreatitis, or just pancreatitis in general, acute, chronic, just pancreatitis. So that when I went into the hospital, I was describing what I knew were the evidence-based symptoms of the disease outside of the labs.
Right.
The pain, where I felt the pain, how I felt the pain, to try to convince, I guess, physicians that this is really what I was going through, and that it wasn't just this diffuse body pain. It was very specific. It was, I knew exactly where it needed to be. And it feels manipulative. It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be an advocacy of myself, and saying, like, I understand how this disease looks. I've read all about it. Trust me, I've gone down all the spirals, all the rabbit holes about it, and I know what I'm feeling. So when I found a doctor that did run tests at Ohio State and found the ductivism and found that my pancreas was in really bad shape, it was such a relief.
Mm-hmm.
And then I attached all of my loyalty and decision making to him.
Yeah.
Then he became the expert. And I didn't have to worry about anybody else after that, because I had a physician who had notes in my chart and notes in Epic, and that I could pull up on my phone and say, look, like, here, this is real. This is what's going on. And there were lots of times working, and so he was fantastic. And we did the feeding tubes and we did some other treatment, but he was very conservative in his treatment. The total pancreatectomy was the last resort for him, because it's a major surgery. You're taking out 4 organs. It's a lot to recover from. It's a 12 to 18 month recovery. You got diabetes for life. It's all of the things. And so that was the last resort for him. And I would have nurses and doctors that I worked with that would say, like, this guy's not moving fast enough. Like, you need to go see someone else. He's not moving fast enough. And I wouldn't do it. I refused, because I had given up all of myself to him and listened to everything he said. And he was the only person I was going to listen to. When the second feeding tube failed and I couldn't eat after that orally, then it got bad enough that it was like, okay, it's time to start talking to other people. And he had arrived at the point where he's like, okay, it's time for the surgery. But it took a long time to get there.
I'd love to hold the surgery in your experience post for a minute, but
Mhm.
obviously around the circle has been TJ and I, but this has been in my mind more of a panel of talking to two men who experience chronic pain. And so I want to elevate TJ. You've gotten a chance to tell your story in part, but you want to build on what Brendan said and just what your experience with fibromyalgia has been.
Yeah. I am. How old am I? 41. And I have been experiencing pain since I was a child. I honestly don't know how young I would have been, but I have memories that it's. I grew up in a Catholic church and was a fairly normal kid in the Catholic church who just didn't want to stand up because it's boring. And then when I was like 16, I went back to that same church for my aunt and uncle's vow renewal. And I was standing in that building and had like a flashback, an intense flashback of remembering the pain that I experienced in my legs. And that's why I didn't want to stand up anymore. And it essentially, I have been experiencing that pain for my entire life, and my own experience of it was that I was just a lazy kid until it became a hindrance and started to be a hindrance in middle school. Like when I played soccer, I played soccer. I was not very good. I got the missed congeniality trophy. The only sports trophy I've ever won was Miss Congeniality. I would have to soak in a bath for an hour after every game because my legs hurt so much, and I just assumed that was from being a kid. And over the course of many years, I saw many different doctors who all told me it was growing pains. And it wasn't until my early 20s that I finally saw a rheumatologist who was like, "Oh no, you have fibromyalgia," which is just a chronic pain condition. They're not exactly sure what it is. It has something to do with the central nervous system not processing information with the brain correctly, and blah, blah, blah. All the things. There's not really anything to do about it. It's awesome. So all of that is true, and through my nineness, like seeing a lot of that experience through my nineness, it was very much like I want to do something about this thing that I can't really describe to other people, and I don't know how to advocate for myself. So I just kept going back and getting disappointing results. There's not a clear, there's no tests for fibromyalgia. There's not any real clear way to pinpoint what this is, and it's a disease of elimination. So so I had to keep going back, and that was terrible. And that's part of why it took me almost 20 years to figure out to get any kind of diagnosis, because I didn't want to just keep jumping through the same hoops over and over again.
Yeah.
And then, so that happened in my early 20s, and then the last 10 years or so, fibromyalgia is a disease that is not supposed to progress. It's not supposed to get worse over the course of your life. You also have to factor in the fact that our bodies are decomposing because they're sacks of meat that are rotting. And like, so our experience of our bodies gets worse over time. That's just fact of nature. But the progression of my pain over the last 10 years has been really significant. And it has been very difficult for me to try and step into places of advocacy for myself, to see doctors and to say, hey, this is what I need. When I enter a doctor's office, it is typically like, you have my chart. Tell me what to do. I don't know what to ask for. And there's lots of other things to say that point to nineness within that experience. But the one thing that we share, and this is true with across chronic illness, but it's you can see some of the type specific stuff about it. But one thing that we share is that I don't present all the time as someone with a debilitating pain disease.
Sure.
I I have days where I'm totally fine, and I have other days where I literally can't get off the couch, and I have days in between that, and hobble around with a cane, and I deal with the image issue of like I don't want people to think that I'm lying,
Yeah.
so I get really concerned about that part of it, and I have not been able to mentally adjust to what my body can't do.
Mhm.
I am disconnected from my body so significantly, and this is nineness, this is lifelong pain, but I am unaware of what my body can and can't do. And I don't pay enough attention to that because I'm always trying to escape my physical experience because I'm in pain all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I get
Another
that.
kind
Yeah.
of compounding. Sorry.
No, I get that. I had those days I get very angry, and so then I try to force myself through it. Right. I'm very aware of what my body can't do now, and it makes me angry, and I try to force myself through. But
Yeah.
I'm curious about something, but Jeff, go ahead and say what you're going to.
The just two things struck me. Like in both your stories, there's a compounding effect in terms of your Enneagram type and your experience of your pain. One of seeking to step away from your body as a 9.
Yeah.
And the trust issues as a 6. Really worth naming. I suppose I would love to pivot slightly toward the relationships that you have. Now, I have an autistic child. I know what it's like to, especially autism actually wasn't a big, it really has come more into prominence, thought and diagnosis and the language since my kid turned 12. But early on, this was not something like we seldom even heard the word autism. And I know what it's like to go into pediatric spaces with lots of loud kids and very bright lights and not be able to have people effectively understand or talk through what was happening in my child's mind and heart. I set that up only in the sense that there is your own relationship with your body. There's also your spouse's relationship with what you're going through, which adds a whole new dimension and dynamic. And you had talked about that, Brendan, in terms of this, your condition causing pain to the ones you loved.
Yeah.
I would love to breach that for a moment, and just would you talk about how you've navigated those waters?
I can. First, I want to run back and say, TJ, I'm really sorry that you're living through that. That's really tough. I can only get it in my own way, but that's really difficult. Yeah, I get it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
It's hard. My husband would kill me probably for saying this. I think he's a 7. So, no, I don't know that he would get it. He doesn't get into the Enneagram too much, and I know that you're not supposed to type people, but I do think that he's a 7. And so he doesn't talk to me a lot about what is going on in his world. He's wonderfully supportive, and he's always there, and he's looks for the positive quite a lot, which can be really hard for me because I like to think that I'm a realist, and so I just want to talk about what is really happening and the crap that it is. And he's really skilled at reframing into a positive space. And I don't know, it's probably a lot of projection and my insecurity about my dealing with illness, but I seek affirmation from him a lot. I really need those reassurances, and quite often ask, even though I know that he's not going anywhere, because he's proven that he's not going anywhere. 8 years we've been together. Today's our 4-year wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And the 8 years that he's been with me, he's dealt with this from day one. And I know he's not going anywhere, but I still always have to ask, are you going to leave me? Do you still love me? Am I ruining your life? Do people believe me? Do they think I'm making this up? What does your family think? Am I crazy because I'm feeling all of this? All of those probably sound to people like pathetic questions, but they're so important, I think, for me as a 6 to know, so that I have that level of certainty. So what is that? I guess that would be, I don't think that I have that connection, or I'm uncertain. I'm going out of myself into the relationship to validate it, and then going back in and taking it up to my head to try to figure out if I believe him or not. Sometimes I don't know that I do. And then I have to check in again and make sure that I still have a reason to believe him. I don't know that I'm answering your question, Jack, but that's how it's kind of played out for us in our relationship. And again, he's wonderful, and he's there, and he's holding my hand in emergency room visits, and he's doing all of the stuff. But I carry a lot of insecurity about how it affects him, about how it affects my parents, who have also had to show up and be in the hospital and sit there for days on end, and how it affects friendships and all of the things.
For a lot of us, the burden that our situation places on the people that we love is a huge part of how we process it, and can also be a compounding effect.
Yes. Burden is I do not want to be a burden.
Oh,
and
the worst.
Yeah, it is. It is. And because of that, I don't like, I'm talking a lot about my illness now because that's what we're doing and that's what I wanted to do. But I don't want to sit in my illness either. And I don't want to be defined by it. And so I am constantly pushing myself through. Like, I woke up in the hospital and was like, when do I get to go back to work? When do I get to go back to my life? They had me up walking day 1. It sucked. I took a step and had to sit back down, and that was my walking day 1. But I was like ready to walk. Like, let's do this thing because I don't want to sit in this. Problem is that I feel like the external environment won't let me not sit in it a little bit because it is just so there all the time. So trying to clean a bathroom and in so much pain while I'm cleaning that I'm just crying and cleaning at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, it's just always there.
Big thing that I'm hearing in both your languages, just how the types process. And I hadn't come to this conversation with this in mind, but stance is really going to be a big element here in terms of the 6, like myself as a 1, will always be kind of asking about my effect on the environment around me and then adjusting. And that's just primary. Like, how am I affecting the world around me? And then I adjust, and that process continues. And obviously, if you're experiencing things within you, being just aware of how those are affecting the world, incredibly important to name. And I imagine that would just be a constant. And then for the 9, it will be just different. It's as opposed to the external process, it's internal process. And I assume I'm dealing with this until I feel like I can move again. And so it's just kind of can become a waiting game, but living in the internal space until that moment. Yeah.
Cleaning the bathroom. That was such like my initial thought was like, why? But just don't clean the bathroom. If you're in that much pain, just stop. Which is
not a choice,
example.
TJ. I have people that might see my house.
And you have a chronic illness.
Yes.
They'll have to deal with it.
Yes.
That I think that is an excellent example of the difference here. Like I am in so much pain that I don't get off the couch. You are in so much pain that it hurts to do the things that you need to do.
Yeah. I just, my in-laws were in town last weekend, and we had them at the house and threw a fourth birthday party for our nephew. And not doing that was not an option. There was a lot of nots there, right? But for me, I had to do that thing. And it wasn't okay that I am in chronic pain and that I'm not doing well. My house had to be perfect. It had to be company ready. I had to have all my themed hot dog stuff for his hot dog birthday party. You know, I went to the cat cafe with everybody. I had to walk a block behind everybody and cry the whole way there and back. But I went because it's not an option not to. I did when we got back say like, I can't do anymore. Like that was a moment where I felt like I really let myself trust that others were going to be okay with me regardless of where I was in that moment, which I don't do often. And I had to say like, I'm spent. I'm done. I'm on the couch for the rest of the night, and I love you. You guys, please go have fun in the yard.
I am super curious about the responsibility for that party. All of the things, the hot dog themed things. How much of that was external expectation?
I don't think it was my perception of external expectation. I don't think anybody had that expectation. They were, they were things
super,
that,
that is such a Six thing that it's really important that people know. I think that expectation, the sense of responsibility, it comes from an inside, but it feels like it comes from outside.
Yes. Yeah. And my mother-in-law said to me, I mean, I was on the phone with her and I was trying to clean the house, and I was telling her that I was really hurting trying to clean the house and not doing well. And she's like, Brendan, we don't care. We don't care about your house. And but I care. I care. And so that it didn't matter that she didn't care.
Right. Right.
Motive.
I was curious. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just curious earlier, so I wanted to ask it, PJ. You talked about the avoidance of advocacy, if avoidance was an okay word to use there. And I think one of the things that I really learned is that the only way through chronic illness is advocacy. So can you talk more about what causes you to be avoidant in that way? And if you're able to, like, are there skills to get through that for you?
So as a 9, like, my internal understanding is that it's not okay to assert myself. It's not okay to make my position known. Don't rock the boat. Don't make waves. Don't advocate for yourself. And that's, again, all of that's a lie. None of that's true, but it's still part of my internal structure. And throughout my experience, the sense of needing to say, this is what I show up with, this is what I need, like, I don't have a clear sense of that. Part of that's because as a 9, I'm disconnected from myself. I'm disconnected from my body, so I don't know how to describe what I'm actually experiencing. And I'm not a doctor, so I don't know any of the medical things. And I'm coming to a doctor because I need help, and that's all of the energy that I have to give to that. And so when I walk in the door, there's a sense of, like, it's sort of in big terms, there's a sense of justice in this. It's like the shalom of, I'm going to a doctor because I need medical help, and the doctor should be able to help me. And that's the whole transaction. And so stepping into that space where I have to do extra work, where I have to explain things that I don't understand and try and get somebody who clearly doesn't believe me. I don't want to fight about whether or not you believe me. Just believe me. That's the whole thing here. And if you don't, I don't have energy to convince you. So, oh well. The 9ness of needing to advocate and not being able to is all over my experience. And it's about, like, I don't believe that it's okay for me to put my foot down and make waves, and it's easier to just, if you don't believe me, I got stuff. I have ways to cope. I'll deal with this over here. Because so much of it is more of an internal process. It's like, I'm not going to fight with you about this. I'll go over here and do it. If that
that helps.
explains that.
It does. It helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say the medical field, for all of its greatness, has also a really long way to go on that front for those living with chronic pain and illness. So,
Yeah.
Can you speak to that, Brendan? You're gonna have an insider look at some levels of what. I mean, my assumption coming would be similar to TJ's. You find somebody who specializes in the thing that you're having issues with. Why would you need to convince them? They've probably spent some time studying this.
Yeah. Well,
and yet,
sorry.
Yeah. So, could you speak to that?
Well, I think that's why the specialists then are so great, because they, that is their thing, and that is what they have focused on and become subject matter experts. And I think it's more of the general kind of health, like, and particularly like emergency room doctors, for example. Like, now, to be fair, they're looking for an emergency, right? You come in with chronic pain, and it's not an emergency. So they're kind of wanting to figure it out and move on. But the lack of compassion there for wanting to really believe somebody and their experience is what I think I was referring to. And
no, that makes sense.
And an industry that should be full of compassion.
Right.
But for many reasons, the healthcare industry is always about moving to the next patient. And so you have very little time, and you've got big stories you have to hear in that very little time. And if there's not something that that you can do about it right away, then it just gets pushed off for somebody at a later time. And I think that that's a lot of what I've experienced as a patient.
Mm-hmm.
Is that pushing it off for someone else at a later time.
If I can write you a prescription now, great.
Yeah.
If I can't, we'll deal with it next time.
Yeah. Are your experiences similar to that?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely. My interpretation of all of that, though, it gets a little bit bigger and says, well, healthcare is just fucked. The whole system is wrecked, and we're all screwed.
Yeah,
and that's it. And
there's some truth in that, but
yeah.
So there needs to be a better way for sure.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to you about your relationship with your work on these fronts as well. Like, there's a relationship to your family, your spouse, but then there's your vocation, your sense of self as a human being, and just what is yours to do. How do you come to that when you are experiencing physical obstacles like these?
All right. So I don't know that I did this well, but this is how I did it. So I attached my identity to my work. That was one of the things that I noticed when we did our mistyping interview, Jeff, almost a year before my surgery, so over a year ago. And I listened to it back, and you asked me about myself, and the first thing I talked about was work. I didn't talk about my personal life. I didn't talk about my husband. I talked about work because I attach my identity to it. It's very interesting, just as a side note, now not working and not going to be working for a while because I'm on leave, trying to figure out what my identity without work is. That's some of the work that I'm trying to do right now. So because I attach my identity to work, I have to be successful. That's a big thing for me. I want, for two reasons. I have a motivation to do good, meaningful work. I want to do work that helps the population and helps my community, and that's why I work in healthcare. In particular, that's why I've worked in pediatric healthcare, because they're the most vulnerable within our population. So, and have the most opportunity too. So I want to achieve high levels in my industry. One, because to me, that means that I'll be more secure. Although I've learned it doesn't necessarily mean that. And I can have the biggest impact if I'm at a higher level. So my career building has all been about how do I meaningfully progress into that next level? And doing that when being sick is not something that people talk enough about. Being a leader, or just being an employee while sick, but also being a leader while sick, is not something that is talked about enough. I hid how sick I was, and I became very skilled at hiding how sick I was. I would not take my medication during the workday. I survived on juice and Jello and mints all day long. And that is what I consumed all day long so that my pancreas wouldn't hurt and I wouldn't be in pain at work and I wouldn't have to take medication for it. And then when I would get home, I'd be a wreck and not have enough time to safely take enough medication to make the pain go away. Because, I take it once every 6 hours. I had a limited amount of time by the time I got home from work. So I was constantly in this cycle of hiding, being in pain, and not being able to deal with it. And I built a really successful career that way. I've worked in healthcare for 20 years. My latest role was a senior director level position. I put on that image that I felt that I needed to put on so that I could be successful. Unfortunately, everybody's bill comes due and I couldn't do that any longer. And people really started to notice how sick I was. And thankfully, I work for an amazing organization that was incredibly supportive of me and gave me 6 months off of work to have my surgery, supported me when I came back way too early. I went back to work way too early. The surgeon told me afterwards he was very nervous about me going back to work, but I insisted that I be allowed to go back to work, and so he let me. But and they've been really supportive of me now that I need to be taking some longer leave. So I'm really fortunate there. But does that answer your question, Jeff?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's a stellar answer. Thank you.
To me, it also sounds remarkably like the house needs to be perfect.
Yeah,
for
sure.
This party.
Yep.
Yeah, like it seems like it's in the same vein of that sort of response, that sense of responsibility is like, this thing is so important that I'm going to put myself aside. I'm going to sacrifice everything about my own physical well-being in order to maintain this thing.
Yes. And there's a control there too. Like I like to have magical thinking where if I can imagine it, then I can influence it and I can control it. And it
mind
just
over matter. Right?
Yeah. And it just will be. And so yeah, I think a lot of it was practice and control. There's a story I tell where I woke up one morning and my feeding tube had fallen out. It was like hanging from my body. And I had some important meetings that day. And so I shoved my feeding tube back into my abdomen and I packed it full of gauze and I taped it down and I went to work. And I leaked out of my shirt all day. And that just was what it was. My suit jacket hit it and it was fine. It was fine.
It's fine. It's fine. We'll deal with this later.
Yeah.
I have responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nobody would have cared if I had called off work that day and said I need to go to the doctor because my feeding tube is falling out. They would have told me to go do that thing, but I couldn't get there for myself. Yeah.
Right.
Your motive is different.
Right.
Or you have a motive for something that's more, a stronger motive for something else.
Sure.
This just to name it, because I think that illustration highlights something that's really important about Enneagram, and not only understanding ourselves, but understanding the people that we love most. Is, I think you were outlining that well. It's, you have these two big competing motives, and notice where your heart and posture and choices went, and that just matters. That really matters.
And the way that can be perceived, I think is really important to see as well. There's just doing some of the research, like that type of behavior is like, you can see that a lot in 8s, you can see it in 1s, you can see it in 2s. You can't necessarily see it all around the circle, but all of those motivations come from very different places. And yeah, the desire to just keep working through chronic illness like that shows up type specific.
Sure.
Yeah.
At some point, I really want to dive into how each of the types push for control and how each of the types experience vulnerability. But it may be that's just fresh on my mind right now, but that's what I'm hearing. It's good stuff. TJ, you got a relationship with work?
I do. Well, not anymore.
which is going to be a worthy place to go for a minute.
Cool. Great. Uh, so I have a chronic pain disease that keeps me from being able to do things physically. And before I knew that that was going to take me away from working regularly, I opened a coffee shop that was specifically designed with me being able to work all the time. And over the course of pandemics and child having and disease getting worse, like everything got worse and it got harder and harder for me to work. And I finally closed the shop at least 2 years later than I should have. Because there is a similar sense of like identifying myself with my work, that like this is what I love to do and this is what I want to be doing, and if I can't do this, then who am I? And I, more than identity, I couldn't make a decision that I didn't want to make because my mind was still ready to keep working. My mind and my heart were still ready to keep working, and my stupid body, which I don't like anyway, was telling me that I can't. And like similar to that idea of control, like I don't want someone to tell me that I can't do something, and I don't want my body to tell me that I can't do something. And in this withdrawn place, like I want to see clarity. I want to have a clear meaning and purpose to the decisions I make, or I want the universe to make the decisions for me while I'm waiting for that clarity. And that means that I waited 2 years, and then the universe kind of helped me make the decision anyway. So there is a strange sense of like the disconnection, the dissonance of what I want to be doing and what I believe that I'm capable of versus what my body can actually do. Like the disconnect there is something that I have not been awake to for most of my life up until the last, even I want to say 6 to 8 months. I come from a family of very strong people. I'm very medium sized, but I have a significant amount of strength behind me. We call it Grandpa Tight in my family, because if Grandpa tightens something, nobody will ever be able to get it off except for Grandpa. Like that's just how it works. And I have that as I inherited that in my family. And sorry. When we were moving stuff out of the shop after it closed to transition to Adam taking over, there was one countertop piece that I really wanted to take with me, and I knew that it was heavy, but I'm also very strong in small bursts, and so it's going to be fine. And at one point we were lifting it to pick up the truck, to put it into the truck, and my knees, like my legs, literally just almost gave it. Like I have never experienced a sensation like that, where it's just like my legs were like, nope, we're not doing this, without any kind of conscious thought. Like it was so intense, and it was representative of this, like, I know what I can do, but more true is that I know what I used to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I can do now, because I'm still sort of stuck in what I used to be able to do. And so in thinking about what my future might be, with coming to like finding more work, finding other things that I can do to help bring in income, fill my days, because sitting on the couch playing video games is not a great way for me personally to spend my time. There is so much wrestling with what I might be able to do in the future, because I don't know. I can't see that future. I only know what I used to be able to do, and now I don't know what is coming. I don't know what has been taken away from me.
I love that you said wrestle. I really resonate with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantly wrestling. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
That's why when I heard, I was online for the workshop that KJ and Suzanne did about trauma. And I loved listening to Suzanne talk about liminal space. That was the first time that I had heard of liminal space. And that is an idea that has kind of really resonated with me during all of this. Liminal space just being the space between what was and what hasn't yet been, right? So did I say that the right way? Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I hope I come out on the other side better and more whole, right? I'm trying to figure out what doesn't serve me any longer and what happens next. But there's a lot of wrestling. Sorry to back to that.
No,
back to you. There's a lot of wrestling in that space too. So.
Not to there is, I think you said this well, Brennan, up front. There can be the overly optimistic spin that can occur for folks in liminal space, but there also can be true, authentic, real things to take hold of that are about the future. And I heard in part both of y'all posturing in that direction of, and so like, as you understand who you are, what your body is, and what can be anticipated with some sense of even joy and anticipation, is there anything that you like grab hold of in those spaces that gives you a little bit more forward thrust?
So I think there's small things that I'm doing now. And Reclaiming You, the book Reclaiming You, they talk about the 3 M's or the 3 triads of resilience. So movement, meaningful connections, and mindfulness. And those are kind of the 3 areas that where I'm trying to put my positive spin on stuff. Movement's really, as a 6, movement is my way out of my head. And it's frustrating because it's really hard for me right now. But I'm learning that not all movement has to be big movement. So I've been in my flower garden a lot this year and just picking at things. And I'm really proud of that. It looks great. And that counts as movement because energy is moving through my body. And so that counts. And then I can do that thing. That brings me a lot of joy. I'm really leaning into my connections and my relationships with my friends. I seek really deep, intense friendships. I don't like the superficial stuff. So I, want to sit around and talk about the world all day long. And I have a great group of friends that I can do that with. So I've been leaning into that. I've been really intentional about my mocha pot for coffee in the morning. That's new.
Mocha pot.
Yeah, I know it's new to me. I just got one, and there's times I do well and times I don't do well at it. But I love the intentional staring at it, waiting for the bubbles to come, and that's a moment of mindfulness for me. So there's those types of things that I'm trying to lean into during this period. One, because I think they serve my recovery. Like my job right now is to recover, and is not to worry about what comes next. When I first realized that I was going to not be working for a while, I immediately went into contingency planning. Okay, so what's next? What certifications can I get? Do I need to go back to school? What else can I do? I started doing all of that. Over the last month or so, I think I've really settled into, I'm not doing so hot, and my job is to recover so that I can go back to those things. And therapy has helped a lot with this, so that I can go back to work really better. And so those kind of 3M things that I just mentioned, the mindfulness, movement, and meaningful connection have been what's most helpful to me.
Just a real quick side note. Have you ever looked into siphons or vacuum pots?
No.
Okay. Just write it down.
I will have to. Okay.
Do some Googling.
Okay. I will check it
blow
out.
Your mind.
All right.
You're going to get really excited.
I was going to get an espresso machine, and then I read how much of a nightmare they are to have at home. And I was like, I'm going to try this mocha pot instead. I really like it. But
Nice. Good. They're simple.
Yeah, that's what I want.
And,
simple.
And everywhere in the world. Like if you go to Europe and you're at anyone's house, that's how they make coffee.
Okay. All right.
So
I'll check it out.
it's perfect. Yeah. Milk pots. Love it.
I got lots of thoughts on what you said, Brandon, but I wanted to float it to TJ. Same kind of question. And we've kind of discussed this in the past, but is there like, does that resonate with you? Presently, my job's to recover in the future, and you all obviously have some difficulty in the future, but is there anything worth grabbing hold of that's in that forward space?
The things that have been sort of resonant for me have been like meaning, like the big purpose of what kind of, not necessarily what kind of future, but like why, what am I gonna keep going for? Like I'm not suicidal in any way. I'm not I'm not in that space, but like there's a lot of, in order to get to any kind of future, there's a lot of work that has to be done for me. And especially because of my pain disease, a lot of that work is really, really difficult. And so what I need a North Star. I need things that I'm big reasons that I'm pointing in these directions. And like one of them is I want to see my daughter grow up, and I want to contribute to the emotional and financial stability of my partner, and there's big things that I want to point at, but I have a really hard time envisioning smaller stuff, more day-to-day kind of things. I can't see what a potential career might look like. I can't see what any kind of day-to-day would be, especially because I can't be certain that fibromyalgia is the only problem that I am dealing with. Like we've started looking into other issues like MS and different things, and with that uncertainty on my plate, I have a really hard time envisioning any kind of future, because I could be totally wrong based on evidence that I don't have yet. And so that being in that liminal space is not necessarily comfortable, but remarkably familiar. And so I don't feel the same kind of tension that I think a lot of people do in liminal space. I don't feel the tension of needing to move. And part of that's because I don't know what's over there, and I don't know how to get there. So
Big things I'm hearing is, again, the idea that for some that posture, that recovery is my job right now, I think is really valuable. Being able to name that. A common mantra in our house, which I've said in the past, is I don't care what you can't do. I want to know what you can do. And oftentimes it looks like recovery. I also loved, Brendan, you brought up the movement, meaningful connection, and mindfulness. One might note that those are the centers. That movement's about your body, and the meaningful connection is about your heart, and mindfulness is about your head. And there's living triadically, I think, is a really helpful way to think through goals and where we are in life. And I just want to celebrate that as it's not just what can I do? It's what can my body do? It doesn't have to do everything, but it can do some things. And the idea of gardening, I find fantastic on this front. Like I heard a buddy of mine said on a podcast the other day that when God made humanity, he gave him two things. It's like, go garden and be free. And that's pretty much what you got. And that just resonated with my soul for 2 seconds, and I liked it. But my struggle really actually has been recently of creating more meaningful connections and being more mindful of things that are valuable, and setting targets there, naming the things that matter in those spaces. I just think that's a great posture for those who are saying, what can I do right now? My stepmom is presently wrestling with a severe form of cancer. My dad's a 7.
Sorry.
She's likely a 5. And she's much older. And so this doesn't look very good. There's chronic illness and then there's terminal illness.
Yeah.
And, but listening to them in terms of what they're doing, in terms of here's the dinner that we're planning for tonight, and that's pretty much what we can foresee, or these are the walks that we can still have, or the books we can still read. That's just has been part of their vocabulary, and that seems really meaningful and challenging to me. So,
I want to say some things about the word recovery as well. Just something I was thinking about. And while doing the research on this, like there was some really interesting sort of through lines with type on the idea of what I'm going to call recovery, and it's like this for a lot of types. There's a sense of getting back to what was before.
right.
For a lot of types, it's like this thing is a problem, and I need to fix this thing so that I can keep going. The way that we perceive what recovery is shows up from type a lot, and for some of us, I think it's like stance is a really big indicator of this, but like withdrawn types are not necessarily looking for recovery. We're trying to adjust to what our life is like now. For 1s, 2s, and 6s, there is a sense of, okay, what can I do now to get back to how I was before?
Yeah.
And for 3s, 7s, and 8s, it seems like there's a real sense of, let's just fix the problem and so we can move on. Like it's a forward focus kind of response. And for a lot of people in chronic illness, recovery is actually about adjusting to the new. We all experience this with the pandemic. There is no going back. We're not going back to normal because normal is different now. And just like a lot of people struggling with chronic illness, the world does not want to change. We want to go back to how it was before. And there's a lot of type in how we perceive what is recovery.
I'm really glad you said that. I feel a little icky because that doesn't sit right with me. I don't like that, TJ, because I've been using that word, and I guess even my mentality in the way of like, this is a thing that I can fix. This is a thing that I can get through, and I'm gonna do, and then it will be over. And there is a new here. I don't think about that very often. I don't like to think about that
because it sucks.
Yeah. But I'm really glad you said that.
I agree. I'm resistant myself to grieving things that have happened and have gone before, and that's what I heard there is there is a very healing side to grief in the way that you're describing. Grief is also invisible. Feeling a sense of well-being and success, I suppose, is also invisible alongside pain. Not only are the negatives, as it were, invisible, but that was kind of where I was landing in my mind and heart for our conversation, is just what I hear in your guys' descriptions is a very human experience, as opposed to like pain can be so isolating. But the thing that I'm routinely hearing is actually you're putting language to what I imagine so many feel, yet in very different ways. And this is the things that kind of keeps me isolated, and yet you're speaking through it is creating that shared connection across all of us, the places that like we're united in our struggles, as it were. I think that's really valuable.
I mean, much like the Enneagram itself, like just hearing someone else say an experience you've had your entire life is like, oh, other people think that way? Oh.
Yeah, when I started going to Kristen Message's group of sixes, I was like, oh my gosh, there's other people like me. Yeah, it's a cool feeling. The Enneagram has been really helpful to me throughout all of this. I think I understood it and was kind of into it as an idea that was cool on the surface level. But then when I kind of got sick and then had to have my surgery, and so much of my time has been spent with it, it's really helpful and healing in a way.
It's excellent. Yeah. You go from it's a fun little thing to jump into to you experience the jolt and say, oh crap, this has something to it.
Right.
So, shocking.
Yes.
Gentlemen, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
Last words on this?
One of the things that stood out in some of my research is the prevalence of people not being believed when they're talking about their pain is significant.
Yeah.
And obviously there are hypochondriacs out there. There are people who are overly dramatic for selfish reasons. But like looking into the ways that type can be informative about whether or not people are believed by their practitioners, by their families, by general society. Like there's something real there. And I think for our types, if you look into your own sort of information about how you handle if I'm looking at how I process information and how I present myself to the world, I can see some through lines about why it's hard for people to believe me. And it's a lot of that comes from my type and the way that I fail to advocate, that I hide the most significant parts of my pain, that I brush it off and it's like, don't worry about me. This cane is no big deal. Don't worry about it. It's the ways that I diminish myself is part of why people don't believe me. And I think we can all do that for ourselves as people with chronic illness. But I think as important, and possibly more important, is the way that we view other people who have chronic illness. And it's like we need to trust people when they're describing their own experiences. And if they're lying, that's not on us to manage. Like that's not our job.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect way to sum that up.
Appreciate you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I was challenged by your empathy, Brendan, and wanted to end with thank you for sharing your stories, and thank you for going to places that are meaningful and personal. And I'm sure it's going to serve a lot of folks. So much love to both you men and your futures and to your families.
I gotcha.
You too. Thanks.